Good morning, everyone. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's post-cabinet press briefing. Today's briefing will be facilitated by the Ministry of Health. With me this morning are the Minister for Health and Social Security, Honorable Nicholas Steele, and the Permanent Secretary within that Ministry of Health, Dr. Francis Martin. Minister Steele, I'll allow you to open the floor. I know it has been a very busy couple of weeks for the ministry as it relates to the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccination campaign. So I'm sure you'll bring us up to date on all of those developments.
Well, good morning to you. Good morning to all of our viewers and listeners out there. It's been a hectic but very pleasant 2 days so far. Just to summarize, today we still remain with no changes with respect to our COVID cases, 148 confirmed cases, no active cases at present, no new cases at present. We currently have 166 persons in quarantine facilities. Those are inbound travelers, and all else remains the same. What I do want to say, though, is that we ended last week having dedicated the entire week for our healthcare frontline workers to have access to vaccinations and VIPs. We ended the week with 394 vaccines being administered. We ended yesterday, just Monday alone, with 649 in total. From Monday morning, the vaccinations were offered to frontline hospitality workers, and there has been significant uptake from them. I just left the Radisson site before coming here, and we have already administered over 100 vaccines for the morning. The lines are there, the individuals are there, everything is moving smoothly, and we would expect to have similar, if not optimistically more, uptake today with respect to vaccinations. I also want to take this opportunity, as I did last night on GBN, I want to take this opportunity to extend an invitation to all media workers who would like to receive the vaccinations. Please proceed at your soonest convenience to the Radisson site this week, and I have already requested that our medical personnel down there facilitate you as quickly as possible so that you receive your vaccinations. On one condition: you do what media workers do, which is you report on the incident, the effects from a personal point of view this time. I also want to take this opportunity to extend again, I know it was officially done through the ministry, but to extend again to all opposition parliamentarians who have not as yet received the vaccination, for them to proceed at their soonest convenience or to contact us at the ministry, myself, the permanent secretary, or the CMO, at their convenience, so that we can make arrangements for them to receive the vaccinations. Having said that, I would leave the rest to questions and comments from the members of the media that are here today. Thank you.
Minister, just to note that the vaccination program also moves to the sister island of Carriacou tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. Actually, right now, there's a team up at Princess Alice as well, administering vaccinations in St. Andrews. That will continue throughout the week in terms of 2 teams on mainland Grenada. I do expect them also to be going to St. Patrick's within this week as well. And there is a team going up to Carriacou tomorrow to spend the next couple of days at least in Carriacou to administer in the same order, first to frontline healthcare workers, then to frontline hospitality workers. And we will use this opportunity as well to offer to as many people in Carriacou as would be willing to take the vaccine using this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Minister. Dr. Martin, anything to add to the opening segment, or we'll just go straight into questions?
We could go straight into the questions.
Okay. Members of the media, so you've heard the opening comments of the Honorable Nicholas Steele. Any questions from members of the media at this point? I know Nancy Maguire is present. Nancy, you may proceed with your question.
Thank you. Could you enlighten us in terms of going forward on the number of vaccines, who will be next, and the locations where, other than the Radisson, the locations, and who's doing the administering, and when do you expect to get more vaccines, and what's the plan for those? I know you have a plan, I just want you to share it with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. In terms of sites and the next step with respect to vaccinations, we will then be moving to 65 and over, prioritizing individuals who are 65 and over. That is a little bit of a different approach in that there are individuals who are not as mobile, and therefore it does and will involve us visiting certain homes for individuals who might be shut in, or it would be extremely inconvenient for them to come to any of the specific sites. As I said earlier, we are currently at Princess Alice, and during this week as well, we will be in St. Patrick's, and from there, as we proceed, we will be establishing fixed sites. But right now, because we are dealing with a different group or the first frontline group, we're trying to go as close as possible to them, as best as possible to make it convenient. As we proceed, there will be designated centers. Also, we will begin the registration or pre-registration of individuals who are desirous of receiving the vaccines and by Thursday of this week would not have received it as yet. The Ministry of Health will have on its website by Thursday ability for you to register, giving your name, your age, your address, your profession, whether you're retired or still working in what area or so that we can schedule you and also schedule the vaccination processes by areas as we proceed. In terms of vaccinations currently on island, there are 6,000 doses on island, which is one of two ways to look at it. That is enough to vaccinate for 2 doses, 3,000 individuals, or once we have in our possession the second batch, which is imminently to arrive, but as in the past, I will not declare anything until I actually have it in my hand. You've seen, while we knew this batch of vaccines were coming, we only announced it and said so once we had it in our hands, because throughout this COVID-19 experience, logistics have always been challenging. So once I have the next batch of vaccines, or the ministry has the next batch of vaccines in their hands, we will make that announcement. Between now and then, we will proceed to hit one of 2 targets. The first target would be 3,000 individuals vaccinated, while guaranteeing that we do have on island the second dose for them. And once we have the second shipment on its way or on island, we can then proceed past that 3,000 level to 6,000, 10,000, depending on the size of the next shipment. So that would be the process. In between, while same as now and last week, where we said we were targeting and prioritizing healthcare workers, there's still the ability for other individuals to come in based on their connections or relations to a healthcare worker. As yesterday and today, we are targeting hospitality frontline workers, but there was still the ability for individuals who are connected to frontline. Like, for instance, I saw one hospitality frontline worker come today with their elderly mother. We would not most definitely turn an individual away under those circumstances. We most definitely would accept and facilitate that. So that is the way we are proceeding. And as we pass the figures for the frontline workers, we would then be going specific to individuals over 65. But if they're living in a home with someone who's under 65, then yes, we would also facilitate that. But we want to make sure that we prioritize a sector, and while doing so, we do allow persons connected to that sector, i.e. in the same household, to also receive the vaccination should they so desire.
Thank you very much, Minister. Rena Pear of GBN, you may proceed with your questions.
Good morning to everyone on the head table. I have 3 questions. My first question is, are persons issued card or some sort of document after the vaccination so that they could have proof that they're vaccine to show whoever they need to show? And the other question is, could you give me a comment as it relates to persons airing their concerns on various social media platforms regarding their employers telling them that if they don't take the vaccine, they would no longer have a job, particularly in some areas in the hospitality department?
Well, first off, persons are given a vaccination card as proof. That vaccination card would have their name, their national ID number, the date they received the first dose, and the date they are to come back for the second dose, as well as the batch number, an actual vial of the vaccine that they would have received, and the individual who would have administered the vaccination. With respect to social media, from the beginning, there's been misinformation, disinformation, and all sorts of accusations on social media. I think I will continue to remain responsible, and that if there is a legitimate concern by any employee of any type of abuse by their employer, that they should approach the Ministry of Labor and speak to the Labor Commissioner. And if they are in a unionized institution, that they should approach their shop steward or their union representative for them to check on the credibility, validity, etc. of any of these accusations. I also want to say on the other side that employers have an obligation to ensure that all possible protective measures are made available to their employees throughout this pandemic and specific to this pandemic. That started with the ensuring that their employees had the necessary protection, the necessary PPEs, whether it was gloves, masks, sanitizing centers, etc., and monitoring for their employees. And now, I would think that most employers would be proactive and be facilitating their employees getting the vaccine. So an employer trying to convince, discuss with an employee the need for them, the necessity for them to take all possible precautions, which at this point in time would also include the vaccination, is possibly what we are seeing and possibly what we are hearing. And we need to be careful and make sure that it is not misconstrued to be anything else than that. An employee has an obligation to ensure that all of their employees take all the necessary protective measures. So they need to be as convincing as possible to their employees while making sure that they respect their employees' rights.
Rena, you had a third question?
Yes, I have a question. But Minister Steele, just before I ask that question, you've given an explanation here, and I just want to just clarify, is it right for an employer to tell an employee, if you don't take the vaccine, you're not allowed to come back to work, understanding that taking AstraZeneca is not a mandatory thing for someone to do. Somebody don't have to do it, it's a choice. Just to clarify that, I want to ensure that I'm getting that question answered.
I really can't comment on it without further details. I think it's unfair to the public at large just to take that general comment as, is it right to do this or not? The way you describe it, in principle, it doesn't sound like it's right. But I'm sure the devil is in the details, and there are two sides to every story. So having not heard that individual tell me that this was said, having not had the opportunity to find out from the employee and the employer what was actually said, I don't think it is correct to comment on it, except to say, as you describe it, it doesn't sound right.
Okay. My final question is away from the vaccination. Are you aware of a situation in the residence of Bushes U where persons are complaining, said to be complaining, they called the station saying that they've been complaining to the Ministry of Health on the way the inappropriate disposal of household and human disposed of feces or whatever the case may be in the Bushes U housing area from workers there?
No, but I think we're fortunate enough. I also have our permanent secretary who, if there are any complaints, you would know about it as well.
Yes, that should be the case. I am not aware of this particular matter, but I'm glad that you raised it, Rena. So I am going to take a note of it and ask the Environmental Health Department to look into it as soon as I get away from this press conference.
Yeah, and Rena, let me go further to say that the fact that two of us don't know about it doesn't mean that residents may not have made a complaint to the Environmental Health Department. It simply says that no one has escalated it to our level to say that there is an unresolved issue. But as the PS said, and I will also follow up to inquire about it, since it has gotten to you, obviously someone out there feels that they have not received the attention or the remedy that they are deserving of.
Do we have any further questions from members of the media? MTV, you may proceed with your question. MTV, good morning to you. You may go ahead.
Good morning, Charlene MTV.
My question is to the permanent secretary. It is with regards to the vaccine. What does a vaccine do? What we really need is an explanation here. What does a vaccine do? Does it protect against the virus? That's one. And if someone takes the vaccine, does it mean they do not have to be quarantined if and when they travel?
Thank you very much for that question. What does the vaccine do? To put it in a very simple way, the vaccine tricks your body into thinking that the COVID-19 virus and the protein spikes that cause the disease is in your body. It tricks your body into thinking that the virus is in your body, so that your body's immune system can start fighting it or mounting a response to it as we speak. And more importantly, it tells your body, it gives your immune system memory to remember that virus, should that virus attack your body sometimes in the future. That is basically how vaccines work. They go into your cells, they allow your cells to code for the protein spikes, and you start building an antibody for that virus. Now, as to the question as to whether or not it prevents you from getting the disease, what happens is the vaccine will not prevent the virus from being lodged in your nostrils or your pharynx or your sinuses or your lungs. It doesn't prevent the virus from coming in there. What it does prevent is the virus causing you to be sick. So in other words, someone who's vaccinated can actually still carry the virus with them. For this reason, it is important that you still quarantine, because you may be able to pass that virus on to somebody else. I must say, however, that this particular matter is currently being studied. The WHO and other scientists are currently looking into see whether or not the amount of virus that you hold on you still, whether or not that is sufficient to cause someone else to become ill with the virus. When that data comes out, we will be able to better tell the need for quarantine or not. But until such time, the status quo remains.
And let me go further to say what PS is referring to. There's currently a study going on in the UK in which individuals who have received their second dose of AstraZeneca have volunteered and are receiving the infection of COVID-19 so that the scientists can study the effects. The preliminary information, now remember this is preliminary and it still has to go through what's referred to as peer review, so it's put out there for all of the other scientists to look at, criticize or comment or agree on. The preliminary information is showing that the virus dies much faster in somebody who's vaccinated. What is trying to be determined is how much faster. So with respect to the quarantine, if somebody is vaccinated, will they have to spend the same time of quarantine, or will they have to spend half the time of quarantine, or will they have to spend no quarantine? That is what is being determined now. But most definitely what has already been determined and qualified is that being vaccinated prevents you from having severe symptoms of the disease, which means once you are vaccinated, the disease is no longer life-threatening to you. And that is the first initiative. That is what we, Grenada, and the rest of the world, every single country in the world, is racing to do for their citizens, to ensure that you vaccinate enough of your citizens, so enough of your citizens have their lives no longer threatened by the virus, so that we can get back to normal. As we proceed with that, from the UK, from Israel, from the US, information is now beginning to flow because enough people are vaccinated in those countries as to how quickly the virus dies in a vaccinated person.
Rachel, anything further from you? Okay.
No. Thank you.
Minister, we have a question online. I guess it's just really a need for further clarity. When do we expect entry requirements to change for persons who have had the vaccine? And of course, based on what you've just said, it would depend on the outcome of the study and other things that are being done right now.
Yeah, I would see it. I would see that most countries will make that decision or announcement as they get to that optimal level of vaccination of their own citizens. So with respect to, for instance, the US and UK and Europe, they're very close to getting to that. So it would be very soon we would expect that they would announce that. Based on the current uptake and turnout that we've seen in the last 2 days here in Grenada too, we are proceeding nicely, and you're looking at a month or two, maybe 3 months, that we would have that optimal level. We have the capacity to do it faster in terms of the team, but it would be about 3 months based on the current uptake that we would be at that level to respond equally, to say, fine, you don't want anybody to enter the US or UK without a vaccine. That's not a problem. That doesn't discriminate Grenadians because the majority of Grenadians have been vaccinated.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have questions to come from MTV, Nancy Maguire, and GBN, but I'll just quickly ask both of you to relay your experience with the vaccination and in terms of the after effects on yourselves individually.
Dr. Martin.
The receiving the vaccine was as normal. I'm scared of injections, although I like giving them. So that part. But I got through that part really well, and a little soreness at the point of where the injection was given. Again, that's normal, expected. The next day, I felt very mildly feverish. That didn't last very long at all. A couple hours, it was gone. And a sense of tiredness that occurred. And by the end of the day, a lot of my other colleagues started indicating that they also felt that sort of tiredness. So, and then, of course, by Sunday morning, I took it on a Friday morning. By Sunday morning, I was back to my normal self. And it feels from the experiences of others that seems to be the experiences that they're getting. Slight fever, some headache, a feeling of tiredness or fatigue, and by the second or the third day, you're back to normal, and that has been my experience.
I had similar but better in terms of I have no problem taking injections, so it didn't bother me. I had a lot of pleasure watching him take the injection and scream, but I didn't have any problems. I also had all of the cameras on me as well. But there was a slight, if I pressed the spot for the first 2 days or so, I could feel that it was a little bit sore, as you would feel if you bounced your arm or so, but nothing else. I didn't feel feverish. I had no aches. I didn't have any flu-like, no headache, nothing like that at all.
Thank you, Minister and Permanent Secretary. MTV, you had another question, and then we'll go back to Nancy Maguire, followed by GBN. Rachel, go ahead.
Minister, when does the first batch of AstraZeneca expires?
The first batch that we have received, if I read it correctly, is expiring end of April or May. Which falls in sync. Most of the vaccines have a 3-month lifespan, and we intend to hold hard and fast on that. The shipments, when they come, that's the first thing, even before they're shipped, that we check and monitor. To make sure that we can find the balance, one, of getting enough to have a consistent rollout, but also making sure that none of the vaccines expire on us because we have possibly acquired more than we can roll out. It has been deeply disheartening and upsetting to know of certain first world nations that have hoarded vaccines and have had to dump because they've hoarded more than they can use, and they're not sharing even while we're asking to buy. They're not sharing, and some first world nations who rather dump the vaccines than sell to another developing country that is seeking to acquire for its own citizens. This is being discussed at the highest levels at United Nations, WHO, etc. It's unfortunate, but in Grenada we intend to ensure that we are adhering, one, to that moral and ethical responsibility in the case of a vaccine that is short worldwide. And when we get our next shipment of vaccines, we will also follow the OECS and CARICOM principle. And if there are any of our neighboring islands that are in short supply or so, we will share with them, because we're all ordering at different times, and it works for us to share with each other and make sure that we all use up in a timely manner and not ourselves try to hoard. I think there are lessons that we have shown many first world nations in handling this pandemic, and I look forward to us in the OECS and CARICOM showing another lesson of working together and sharing the limited resources that we have.
Thank you, Minister. The question from Nancy is pretty straightforward, so I'll take the liberty of asking it. She's asking what venue in St. Patrick's is being used for the vaccination.
Dr. Martin, has there been a confirmation on it?
We haven't had a confirmation on it yet. We're working with the district medical officers and the public health nurses to make a determination, and we will say that pretty soon. Of course, the health facility is very central, and I can see that being a preferred site, but a definitive decision hasn't been taken yet.
And let me explain why it's a bit different than just simply saying the health facility, which would appear to be the obvious choice. In this vaccination process, there is the individuals will come in, they will register for the vaccination, they will receive the vaccination, and that's a nice, smooth, efficient flow. But then everyone must sit and be observed for 15 minutes before they can leave. So while there's an efficient flow of vaccination, of vaccinating individuals, and that happens maybe one every minute, everyone must sit and wait for 15 minutes. So we want to make sure in the choice of sites, that we have ample, comfortable waiting areas for individuals who have just received the vaccine and have to sit for those 15 minutes. And then eventually, which happens after the first hour or so, individuals who are waiting to receive because they have to wait for those who have just received to leave. So to make sure that it's comfortable, we don't want persons standing in the hot sun waiting, or standing for too long waiting for the vaccine, and then, for instance, somebody faints from being in the sun, and then there's a wrong story or headline that the person fainted because of the vaccine. So we want to make sure everybody is comfortable, as well as the fact that, as we have said, we are also focusing not just our frontline workers, but our elderly. So all the more reason, again, to go the extra distance and make sure that the site can take a large amount of people coming in.
Rena Pear, you have a follow-on question?
Yes, just one last question. I don't know. I think maybe Dr. Martin might be able to answer that, or Minister for Health. But just to ask, if Grenada happens to experience the second phase of the virus, would the AstraZeneca vaccine, would the vaccine be still reliable?
Well, I'll start from the science of it all. If the strain of the virus remains the same, the technology remains the same, the AstraZeneca vaccine continues to be as efficacious as it is now, then the short answer is yes. We expect the vaccine to perform very, very well. But I must say that based on the performance of our COVID response thus far, and the hopeful success of our vaccine, and with everything else that is happening around us, I think we're doing our best to avoid a second wave. Because I mean, of course, the countries have had this and pandemics, that's how they perform. But I think we're very hopeful that we'll be able to avoid a second wave. The other issue is we're not saying that the AstraZeneca vaccine is the only vaccine that's going to be used in the Caribbean. As things progress and it goes on, it is possible that our region may get other vaccines as well. So the options are open for us in the region in the event that something untoward as a second wave manages to come. I don't know, Minister, have anything to add?
No, I think we're also seeing from certain countries that are still in their second wave, like the US and the UK, who have gotten up to significant levels of vaccination, and Israel as well, that the number of cases are dropping. The same other actions and movement or lack of movement of people continue, but more and more people get vaccinated, and therefore the number of cases, the number of hospitalizations, etc., are dropping. So there are two ways that we will avoid or fight a possible second wave. One is maintaining our due diligence and the protocols that has brought us thus far. It is with the collective compliance of the entire nation, wearing of the mask, social distancing, minimizing our gatherings, that have gotten us this far. And now, with a new weapon in our arsenal against COVID-19, which is the vaccination of our population, it will take us further. Once we can accelerate the process of vaccinating, we can then begin to have, and I look forward to that, to coming here and we're discussing what we're doing and the big fireworks, etc., for Christmas, New Year's, or Carnival, or we're going to have a September Carnival because we have vaccinated the majority of our population. All of those things are possible if we work together and get vaccinated. If we slow down this vaccination process, then all of those things will still be possible, but they'll be possible down the road, much further down the road, and we will be looking at some of our neighbors and so enjoying their time because they have vaccinated the majority of their population, and we have delayed because our population has adopted a I want to wait and see attitude, and we have waited to see others enjoy and then find it is too late for us to enjoy the same.
Minister, a question here from social media. Minister PS, will we get the other vaccines? Will we have access to the others on the market?
As in the other brands?
Yes.
Yes, there is. There are discussions right now. We are holding hard and fast to our original principle, which is that we will not use any vaccine that is not approved by the WHO, the Pan American Health Organization, and or any of the recognized, and we have clearly from day one said which of those recognized entities, which is the CDC or Food and Drug Administration of the US, Public Health Canada, the UK regulatory system for medicine, and the European Union. Any of those four approve a vaccine, as they have with the Pfizer, BioNTech, with the Moderna, with the AstraZeneca, then we will begin acquiring those vaccines. Right now, I would say that there is an imminent announcement on other vaccines being approved by WHO, Pan American Health Organization, and possibly UK and European Center for Disease Control. Once that announcement is made, we have already, having had the advance information, started discussions about accessing those vaccines, but will not access them, will not bring them here until those announcements are made.
Minister, and further, another comment here from social media, and it was also raised on the GBN program last night, in terms of the individual decision by specific countries not to approve certain vaccines. For example, the AstraZeneca is being cited as having not been approved by a particular country. Can you explain that process for our audience?
I think, Philomena, you've appropriately phrased the question in terms of not approved. We're seeing sensational headlines, and I think purposely so, to stir emotions, to say that this vaccine has been banned. We have no information, and if you read any of those articles, not a single article speaks about any vaccine being banned in any country. That is not what is being said at all. What has been said consistently are countries are prioritizing one manufacturer's vaccine over another for various reasons. In Europe, we are seeing many of the European countries who have had access for months on Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, continuing to say that they are going to be giving, as they started already, they're going to be giving the Pfizer BioNTech to 65 and over, and that now that they have access to the AstraZeneca, they're going to be giving the AstraZeneca to 65 and under. And you've even heard certain statements saying because they don't have enough information on the use with persons 65 and over. Now, those entities are in a fortunate position where they rely purely on their own, themselves, to make the decision for themselves. They don't rely on the WHO, even if the WHO says something, although the WHO is the official authority. We are saying that we rely on the WHO or them. So if any of the same entities that I called, CDC, Public Health Canada, or UK or European authorities, were to say that they do not advise or they ban, then we would not be using either. We would have similar concerns. But them saying that they're not using it in one area but using it in another area or age group or so, that's not a ban. That is because they have the luxury of choice. They've started using a certain vaccine for a certain age group, so they're continuing. The only other difference there is in South Africa, where the South African government started the acquisition and approved. It's still approved. AstraZeneca is still approved in South Africa. What the South African government has said is that they did a study on the effectiveness of AstraZeneca on the South African strain Now, it's the only study that was done. They didn't study any other vaccination. They only studied the AstraZeneca vaccine and found that it gave minimal protection for persons. In other words, that you could still get mild to serious, not hospitalization, but mild to serious conditions from COVID-19. And they said, as the articles will show if you read it, it says that because 90% of their cases are that strain, they're going to try and use something else with the expectation that it would have a better effect. And I agree with their decision if 90% of their cases and they have a high level of community spread, that the first vaccine they test gave minimal, but still gives. Remember, it didn't say none, minimal. That try and see if there's another one that gives better. But there is no article that you can find that says another one gives better. There is only one article that says that one vaccine was tested, and that is the AstraZeneca, and it gave minimal. So in our opinion, because we do not have a wide community spread of the South African variant or any other variant, it is logical for us to proceed with the use of the AstraZeneca, because even if the South African variant were to come to Grenada, the minimal protection would block it from becoming widespread in the community.
And because someone actually asked me this question, let me just state categorically that the World Health Organization has approved AstraZeneca for the age group over 65. It's there and is documented there. So despite the sensationalization that you see and the headlines that grab people's attention, there is good evidence that it does protect in the age group over 65.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. A follow-on question to one that was asked earlier with regard to the immunization record. Now, we know that a physical record is given to the person who has been vaccinated. Are we storing that information electronically as well?
Yes, fortunately for us, our Ministry of Health has put on an electronic platform or national immunization record, and that has been happening for a couple months, a couple of years now actually. So this one, it was a walk in the park to simply just add the COVID vaccine to this, so that information is stored electronically and will be there for a very long period of time.
The needles that are being used for the vaccination, were they procured by government or were they a gift?
Again, we are quite fortunate in the sense that we've had quite a good stockpile of needles prior to us receiving the vaccine. In preparation for what we think may happen in terms of widespread vaccination, we have also ordered in excess of 50,000 needles in preparation for upcoming. But thus far, we are quite fortunate that we actually had in stock the amount of needles we needed.
Maybe you can tell them how much we had started this month with in the stock.
We started with, I think, was 20,000 this month. Yeah.
And another question here from Linda Straker. The invitation to the opposition, is it for those in Parliament or all in opposition?
But Linda, define all in opposition. Although, I mean, most definitely, I don't want to make fun, jest of it. It is a serious invitation to all opposition parliamentarians, but most definitely members who are of an opposition party or a party that opposes the government. I have said and have respected and appreciated when when we speak in unison with respect to this COVID-19 and what we need to do to protect the nation. So I will make every effort to facilitate either of those individuals in receiving their vaccine should they so want to.
And a final question here from Linda, seeking clarity on the invitation to journalists. Is it just for, to media representatives, is it just to newsroom journalists or all persons in the media landscape?
Well, again, Linda, as far as I'm aware, you have an association. So easily for me to qualify that, I would say all members of the association. But this vaccination process is for all. So once you can verify, or your peers can verify, that the individual might not be a member of the association, but they are a media personality, and in most cases, most if not all of the media personalities have interacted with us, so we would be able to know. The invitation is open. The invitation is open. The intention is to vaccinate as many people as possible. So as many media persons as possible. We're not going to make a separation as to type of media person or so.
Thank you, Minister. Nisha Paul, you're up. You're up next with your questions. Nisha, good morning to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. I'm not sure if you're here. I'm experiencing some internet issues. Are you hearing me? Hello?
We can hear you, Nisha. Please proceed. We can hear you.
Okay. Good morning to everyone. My first question is one of the report for country manufacturers as drafted by Gavi. Has the government taken any steps to draft legislation in this regard, granting indemnity and liability to manufacturers? And my second question is also when you look at the pillars of the COVAX facility, the civil society has a role to play in implementation in terms of bringing discussion and feedback from members of society. Can you describe the role that civil society?
Okay, Nisha, I think we lost you there. I think we can attempt to answer the first question. Maybe what you can do is to send me the second one via text, and I'll relay it to the panel.
Yeah, let me try and guess what your first question was. I heard Gavi and I heard legislation or so.
She was asking if there's any legislation granting indemnity to the manufacturers.
Well, in Grenada, the authority to import vaccines and so rests with the Ministry of Health, Government of Grenada. And there is no legislation saying that there is an indemnity, or is there any legislation specific to vaccination penalties or so, because we do not have manufacturers of vaccinations here in Grenada. The countries that would have to be a consideration for are countries that have an active vaccination production market or sector or segment, and therefore have legislation specific to that. In terms of indemnity, though, I think that is more of the question of concern. As Dr. Charles has alluded to a couple of times, and I will try and say it as close as possible in his words or similar words, which is that the vaccination process is happening as fast as possible, agreed by all countries and all producers and all authorities. And as such, it is recognized that in the past there have been many lawsuits and so that until proven that they are frivolous or that they are not meritable or so, they stop, or it can result in the delay or a court order to stop the rollout of a vaccination process, and then months later or years later it is found that it was not necessary, it is okay or so. So from that standpoint, there has been a request from WHO and Pan American Health in our instance to ensure that there is no type of legislation like that in the country that would delay, unnecessarily delay or maliciously delay the rollout of vaccinations, because, for instance, an anti-vaxxer, as people are known, there's no legislation in Grenada that allows an anti-vaxxer to take the government to court to say, I want to stop anybody from getting vaccinations because I don't believe it or so. Those are the kind of things that we intend to avoid, and that was the intention when you talk about an indemnity clause, to prevent the malicious delay of a vaccine rollout because you have laws that allow somebody to be litigious with respect to that, and malicious.
Okay, Minister, I have the second question from Nisha Paul. She's asking to describe the role of civil society in Grenada in the implementation of the COVAX facility.
In the COVAX facility is, I think you mean in the vaccination process. The COVAX facility is a facility that allows us to have access to fair and equitable access to vaccinations, and that's all it does. It allows countries like Grenada, most and all of the Caribbean and Latin America, South America, as well as Africa, to have equitable access to a vaccination. I don't confuse that with it in any country, the desire to engage any of our stakeholders with respect to vaccine uptake, or to ensure that there isn't vaccine resistance, or seeking assistance with vaccine anxiety. We maintain a very good relationship with our stakeholders. In fact, the Prime Minister meets, I think, if not once a month, at least on a regular basis with all of our stakeholders, which includes social partners, all of our social partners. Right, and there's one on Thursday as well. I would not refuse any help or assistance from any stakeholder. The Ministry of Health has been charged with, and we have engaged in the past. I've had regular conversations with the religious fraternity, with trade unions, with all stakeholders, all. So has there been a formal engagement asking them to assist? No, there has not. I would welcome their participation in the process, but first and foremost, we'd need to know that they're all on board with the process. So any entity, any member of our social partners, in the same way I've made the offer to our opposition and opposition parties as well, any sector or segment in Grenada that would like to come forward, as we have done with the GHTA and the GTA, any sector that would like to come forward and say, listen, I would like to participate and help and push forward the rollout of vaccines in Grenada, we would welcome and have special discussions with them to deal with their sector. But the reason that has not been done to date is that the vaccine is not specific to any sector, religious belief, or union or non-unionized member or so. It is based on, first and foremost, the occupation of certain people, and the location in their occupation, i.e. frontline workers in healthcare, frontline workers in hospitality service, and then persons with comorbidities, age or underlying conditions. So it's not about membership in a fraternity or religious beliefs or anything like that. But I do think for us to achieve that final yard or get to the finish line, that we do need as many entities as possible to embrace, cooperate, and participate.
Minister, you just made reference there. We have questions to come from MTV and Nancy Maguire, just in closing, but one more from the social media space. The question is being asked, why is the sanitation worker not considered as frontline worker? I guess this relates to the vaccination. So can we identify where in the plan that they fall?
The sanitation workers, they are also considered to be at risk. not just of COVID, but other things as well. But like I say, I mean, I don't like the levels of putting people on different levels and strata and so on. The intention is to vaccinate as many people as possible, and I'm pretty sure that the sanitation workers will be able to get vaccinated. And even now, I think there's still an opportunity now for them to get vaccinated. You know, I mean, everybody can't be done at the same time, but to say that they're not, I don't think, because they're out there and they're really at risk of a lot of things. So, like others, like the police and so on, I think they're also at our front lines.
Thank you very much, P.S. Martin. Nancy Maguire, your final question, and then we'll take the last one from Rachel Bain at MTV. Nancy?
Thank you. I want to go back to the rollout for a minute. When you get to the over 65, will the Ministry of Health be taking its vaccination teams to the various homes for the aged throughout the state?
Yes, that is certainly part of the plan going forward, because we recognize that that's a risk age group, and because of mobility issues, our public health professionals who are accustomed going out to the district in any event will be going to the homes to get those done.
Rachel Bain, you have the final question of the morning.
Okay, so Minister, there are some concerns about illegal dumping in between buildings in the town of St. George. For example, DePontview Street, also known as Cockroach Alley. Is the ministry aware of this, and what are some of the plans to address this concern?
Thanks again for this comment. And as with the RIA one on the Boucherville situation, that is one I will, once I finish this conference, will speak to the Environmental Health Department about.
Let me say just to add that the Ministry of Health is the enforcer of health standards. There is another ministry, and I'm not passing the buck. Ministry of Environment deals with the collection of, but we work in harmony. So there will be discussions as to whether what you are alluding to is because you did say illegal dumping. So for one, that it is illegal dumping, the Ministry of Health has to deal with that in terms of enforcing. But then the collection of what is dumped, whether it is to ensure that the individual who did it, or either way that it is cleaned up, we will also follow up and make sure.
Thank you very much. Dr. Martin, your final thoughts, comments this morning?
Thank you very much. Citizens and colleagues and friends, vaccination has always been a very topical issue. Around the world, there has been anti-vaxxers and people going against vaccinations. What people forgetting is that we and our country and our region has been very successful with protecting our citizens by doing useful vaccinations. It is well documented that we were one of the first areas in the world to have eliminated measles, mumps, rubella, and polio. And that's because of vaccinations. We are still in the same era. The vaccines that are being used is the same technology that has been used over the years for vaccinations. Many of you get a nail juke or a cut and you're quick to say, I need a tetanus vaccine. It's the same technology. We are just using it now to protect our nation from this pandemic that is ongoing. And so for us in the Ministry of Health, we have no fear that the side effects of the vaccine is similar to the side effects of all the vaccines that we've used in the past. We vaccinate our children about. So I want to encourage persons to think about what they're doing and think about the decisions that they're making when it comes to vaccinations. We're still working out how long you will be immune for. We believe in the least you'll be immune for a couple months very well, and as the study comes out, we'll figure out if you're going to be a lifetime immunity or immunity for 1 year or 2 years. So please go out and become vaccinated and help us to fight this COVID pandemic together.
Thank you very much, Dr. Martin. Minister Steele, you have the final words of the morning.
Let me just, I've been monitoring, and there are one or two questions that were raised on social media. So before I make my final statement, is to say, first and foremost, with respect to the flights from the UK, the ban on direct flights from the UK, as we said, continued to the end of February. We have not had any discussions on the starting up of flights, and that decision has technically been made for itself in the UK itself saying that non-essential travel is not allowed, and them questioning people at the borders to ensure that they're not coming here on vacation or so that it is essential travel. There is one direct flight, I believe, to the region through Barbados. For the time being, we would prefer that it remains that way because there isn't enough load right now for us to have discussions with the airlines for a direct flight. But as soon as the situation changes in the UK with respect to their regulations, and I believe each government has a responsibility to support other governments in their regulations. The UK has clearly said that they do not want their citizens traveling for anything other than essential travel. I don't think it would be appropriate for us to say, well, we have flights and come to Grenada for vacation and find a way to beat the system in the UK. Grenada welcomes you. So no, we're holding hard and fast on that, and our citizens have been able to return from the UK, albeit in transit. I regret the fact that that's an additional inconvenience, but for the time being, that is based on loads and in order to protect ourselves as best as possible, the only alternative that we can come up with. The other question with respect to COVAX, yes, through the COVAX facility, 20% of our national vaccination need is supposed to be delivered to us. It is supposed to be delivered to us sometime between the first quarter and the end of 2021. And as such, while we are most grateful for this, we do not rely on this alone. And we have been doing our bit to access vaccines for purchase, as well as on a bilateral basis, as has been done with this first batch of vaccines that have arrived, and will continue to do so. We do expect imminently to have to make payment for vaccines and are prepared and ready to do so. We do appreciate any other assistance because vaccines come at a great cost, and we will hold hard and fast to the policy that we are not going to charge our citizens for the vaccine in order to make sure that the rollout happens as quickly as possible. But any assistance in that is very much appreciated. So let me say in wrapping up, I am quite happy to date with the uptake that we have seen within the hospitality sector. I want to take this opportunity to thank the GHTA and the various entities, GTA, GHTA, and the various individual entities within the private sector of our hospitality industry who have stepped forward, who have facilitated and allowed their employees who are willing to take the vaccine to come, giving them the time off, in most cases transporting them and coming there with them to get the vaccine. It's really appreciated by the ministry and the team down there of our community nurses vaccination team that is working there. And it shows that definitely the hospitality sector recognizes they've paid a significant price during this COVID pandemic, a significant price. They've been one of the hardest hit sectors. And like all sectors and like all Grenadians, we believe we are resilient and we will bounce back. We bounced back from Ivan, we've bounced back from all and other things that have been thrown at us. We will bounce back from COVID-19. The hospitality sector does recognize that the quickest way and the only way to get past this is to vaccinate our population. So I really want to thank them and to recognize the individuals who have come forward to take the vaccine. And I want to say to them and to the media workers who I look forward to seeing you today and tomorrow taking your vaccine. It's no secret. We really want you to tell the world about the experience of getting the vaccine. Tell people that you have received the vaccine. Tell people what it felt like. Tell people what happened after the first day, 2 days, week, or whatever or so. You will see that it is the same thing that we are saying. In fact, we put it in writing and we give it to everybody there, and that's one of the ways that we will convince others. There are many people out there now that have changed their narrative, so to speak, and are now saying, where before they were saying, I'm not getting the vaccine, they're saying, well, I'm waiting to see others get it. You are the others that have gotten it so far. By today, we hope to be approaching the 1,000 mark. And that is just under 1,000 people who can tell others that it is okay and what it is, and it is from that we're all in this together, and I think we have a responsibility to take the vaccine, and then we do have a responsibility, having taken the vaccine, to let others know that it is okay to take the vaccine.
Thank you very much, Minister Steele, for those closing comments, and also to you, Permanent Secretary Dr. Martin. Thank you for sharing the information that you have this morning. To members of the media, thank you for being here. We look forward to your coverage of the various elements of this news conference. To the listening and viewing public, thank you so much for tuning in to this official source of information. Remember to always check your sources of information for authenticity. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again next time.